In this video, I'll be demonstrating how to clean and service a carburetor for a petrol generator.
The first thing I'm going to do is clean the outside. I like to use enamel thinners as a cleaning agent. Right, now the gasket is sitting on the unit and I don't want to damage the gasket, so I'm just going to peel the gasket off before I clean. Right, now I need to clean the outside of the unit. So this is enamel thinners, just cleaning the outside. Right, so I've cleaned the outside with the enamel thinners. It did a pretty good job. Right, so this is where the fuel sits. So I need to open this bowl here. If you have an impact driver, that will be useful. Right, just inspecting these two. Here's the solenoid pin and here's that nut. This is completely gunked up, so both of these need to be thoroughly cleaned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this lie in the enamel thinners. Right, so I'll leave that for a few minutes. Now open this float bowl, also very dirty. Sometimes you need to actually scrape it. You can see there, I'm using a screwdriver to scrape all this gunk away. So the next step is to clean this float bowl. Right, on this unit there's a little seal here, just be careful not to lose it. And I've partially cleaned this. I'm just going to let this soak in the enamel thinners. Right, here's that screw that has been soaking in the enamel thinners. Right, I'm just taking a toothpick and just poking at this hole here and the one on this side. If you've got wire, you can use wire. And this is where it's useful to use compressed air or a carb cleaner because it's got this spray nozzle. Right, just make sure all these holes are unblocked. There's a few over here and then there's two there and then there's one through hole running through like that. Right, now it's time to clean this section over here. I can remove this pin here and remove the float. I'm going to clean all of this.
When cleaning out the float, just quickly check that it does still float. Put it in some water and make sure that when you depress it down, it comes to the top. It's a very rare fault, but sometimes a float gets a hole in it and it doesn't actually float, which causes the carburetor to allow more fuel to come in and therefore you will have wastage. Inspect the condition of this pin. This particular one has a rubber top. Check that the rubber is still in good condition because that rubber stops fuel from coming out the top of the carburetor. Some of them are steel pins and the rubber is on the inside where the tube is. Check on the inside to see that the seal is still intact.
Right, now I need to clean this section over here. There is another O-ring over here. Sometimes it's useful to use a toothbrush to get into the hard to reach places. Right, now I take a flat screwdriver and I turn it until it seats. There we go. And I depress and unscrew. And I can feel it's come loose and I can flip it upside down. And there we go. And there's the main jet. I'm going to let these soak in the thinners for a bit. Right, while that is soaking, I'm going to come back to the solenoid pin and just clean it. Right, so the solenoid pin is now clean and I just need to clean this. This is a bit smaller, so I'm using some wire. Right, so I'm making sure that every one of these holes are open. Right, so I'm blocking the top and I'm spraying from the back. Right, I'm going to let this lie in the thinners for a bit longer. Right, now what I do is I spray some carb cleaner in here. And I can let it soak because it seems a bit blocked. So I'm spraying there, I'm spraying in there, and I'm spraying here, and I'm letting it soak. I'm taking my wire and I'm threading it all the way in here. Right, now that it's soaked for a bit, I'm spraying it at full velocity here. And this one. Right, so this seems to be blocked. So I'm going to let it soak for a bit. Have a look on this side and see if there's anything in the way. Now in my case it seems to be blocked, so I'm just putting some wire in here because this is where the spray is supposed to come out. Okay, there are 3 holes here and I'm just putting my wire inside here because they were not spraying when I was using the carb cleaner. Right, so I'm going to spray the carb cleaner and I should see it come through there. There we go. Now they're unblocked. If these pores are still blocked and the spray is not coming through there. Take compressed air and blow in the holes. If you don't have a compressor, you can also use a blower. If you see mine, it's got some dirt built up here. I'll need to clean this dirt out. Just make sure that the flaps can move quite easily. And the choke side can also move very easily. Right, the next step is to open the screw. Right, so I'm just going to remove this jet. It should come out easily. I'm just taking some pliers here on the side and lifting this up. Right, so this has to be cleaned. I'm just going to let it lie in the thinners for a bit. Right, so there is some dirt there and I don't want it to fall in, so I'm just turning it upside down and I'm using my toothpick. Right, and now I'm going to spray in here. It's supposed to be coming out here. It seems to be a little bit blocked, so I'm going to just use a blower, blow it out. Yeah, now it's coming out. There, it's not only coming out now. And I'm going to spray in the other direction. Right, so I'm reassembling, but before I do, I'm just cleaning this last piece here. Cleaning there and there. It is completely clean. Now I can insert this. There's a very important step here. See, if I put my wire here, right there I'm showing the wires moving through that side there. So that means that that hole needs to be facing that wire. Now in this case it's quite easy because the top has a oblong shape. Now I'm returning that. I'll just give it a tap. Right, so I'll just tighten this back to the way it was. It's just to hold it in place. It's not supposed to be very tight. Right, now I return this. Notice the orientation. Make sure it falls all the way in. Now I put the nut there. I'll secure the nut. Make it a little bit tight. Right, so I'm returning the float. Just make sure your O-ring is still in good condition. Just making sure there's no sediment on here. Alright, so I return this. Notice the orientation. Right, there's a seal that sits over here. This seal is no longer in good shape. I'm going to replace this seal. I have an assortment of O-rings here and I'm just going to replace the worn O-ring. Right, so this O-ring seems to fit nicely and I'm just going to wet the shaft so it doesn't grab on the shaft when I'm turning it. Notice I'm just gripping it like this. I'm not making it very tight. And there's another O-ring over here which is completely flush. Right, there's the old O-ring. So I'm going to remove this and replace it with a new O-ring. There's the new O-ring and notice that it is proud. It has a profile. That's going to provide a better seal. Right, before you return your solenoid, you can test it. Right, before installing the solenoid, there's the resistance, about 8 ohms. I just measured between the two leads. If you want to be 100% sure, you can take a bench supply. I've set it to 12 volts and I have the positive on the one lead. And when I put the negative here, you can see how the solenoid is operating correctly. It's important to know which way the solenoid faces so you know which way the wire is going to travel. I very gently wipe any sediment off the old gasket. If possible, renew your gasket. Right, so this is now ready to go back on the generator.
Thanks for watching and cheers.